Sahana vavatu Sahanau bhunaktu Saha viryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So what we saw yesterday is that human pursuits are divided in two things, Shreyas and Preyas. And what was said is both have their own share of difficulty. It's not like, oh, you choose Shreyas means everything is going to be all rosy, because there is a lot of reshuffling. You're going against the mainstream. You yourself have to commit to something which is, where you don't know where you're going. So both are not like, oh, one is all rosy and the other is all difficult. That's why discrimination is very much required. The feedback that you get from the society, the value that people give to this knowledge, and you need to deal with all of that. It's not something, plus all your commitment. So if your life is very busy doing many things, you have to commit some time to studying. That means you have to stay away from other things. You have to perhaps change your lifestyle. Decisions have to be more based on dharma and not just whatever pleases you. This all is an effort. It's not like, oh, it's all, now that you have chosen the absolute, everything is going to be all very easy. No. So initially both are challenging, but Shreyas is totally different from Preyas, because Shreyas, what it gives you the absolute, whereas Preyas keeps you in the relative, right? So the absolute doesn't exclude relative. That is the most beautiful part. That's why the person who chooses Shreyas is really a discriminative person, because you get the absolute, and in the process you also get the relative, because the secondary means for getting Preyas is all the growth. As you grow, the nature of your actions change. The way you look at the universe changes. The way you respond to situation changes. Your own understanding of yourself and the world changes. And that makes nature of your actions much more evolved. And that gives you compensation. It's not like now that you have chosen the absolute, the relative will, you have got nothing to do with relative. Relative also begins to be actually much better. So, Shreyas doesn't exclude Preyas, but Preyas doesn't include Shreyas. And that's why it's a smart choice. It's not this or that. We make it as though it's mutually exclusive, but it's not mutually exclusive. The absolute cannot not include relative, but the relative doesn't include absolute. That's why it's a smart choice. And this is why ultimately what was said is the person who has chosen Shreyas gets the highest, whereas the person who has chosen Preyas remains within the relative. Is it clear? Let's move to the next verse. The next verse is very interesting. Let's look at that. Duram ete viparite vishuchi avidya yaja vidya iti jnata vidya vipsinam nachiketasam manye natva kamaha bahavaha alolu panta. Who wants to read the translation?
These two diverse courses, which are known as ignorance and knowledge, are far divergent. I consider Nachiketas to be a seeker of knowledge. Many sense objects do not tempt you.
Okay, so what he talks about is the term used in this verse is vidya and avidya. So let's little bit look at what is the connection of vidya and avidya. What do you think is the connection of vidya and avidya to Shreyas and Preyas? How would you connect logically this verse? So it may not be totally apparent, so I will explain. So what we saw is Shreyas for Shreyas there is primary means and secondary means. What was said to be the primary means? Pramana means engaging with Pramana means Shravanam, Manana and Nididhyasana. And what was said to be the secondary means?
Karma Yoga.
Excellent. Right? Karma Yoga, changing the criteria for reaction. What else?
Meditation.
Meditation.
Lifestyle.
What?
Mastery of mind.
Mastery of mind.
Living house.
Sorry?
Living house. Taking care of your house.
Or take care of your health. Yeah, secondary means includes everything that you do to prepare yourself for
Raga management.
Raga Dvesha management.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah, what you said is correct, right? Yoga and anything that you do to keep your body and prana in good condition.
Yeah. So yoga in terms of good health and to keep your body and mind in healthy condition. So this was, so now primary means is engaging with Pramana. And here Pramana is Shabda Pramana, means it is the words of Shastra. And you have to expose to the words of Shastra, and what Shastra is conveying, you need to capture accurately. So there is no gap between what the Shastra is revealing and what you understand. That's called exposing yourself to Pramana and making sure that in no way your understanding deviates from what is intended to be conveyed. Okay, so this engaging with words of Shastra is called Pramana Pravritti. Now, you have gained a lot of knowledge, and this particular engagement with Shastra to come to know your true nature, this is called Paravidya. Knowledge which gives you the highest, the absolute. And everything else that you have learned so far is not really avidya, but it's not totally ignorance, but it is aparavidya. What is aparavidya? Things that you learned in school, you learned in college, you by reading books. So this is called aparavidya, knowledge of everything else. Now, what we need to do is, what are the convergence and what are the differences between Paravidya and Aparavidya? What is different? What is similar? So, first, Aparavidya, the things that we have known so far, like you studied chemistry, you studied biology, you studied art, you studied many different things. And how did you study it? What are the means that you used to study? What did you do?
Senses, mind.
Excellent. So you, whoever came to know this knowledge and is imparting it to you, so whoever came to know, right? The first one used their perception and inference to know things. This is how they gathered the knowledge. In Sanskrit, perception is called pratyaksha and inference is called anumana. This is how they gained the knowledge. And now they are passing it on. They are passing it on. The teacher, the first discoverer, whether it is Newton or Einstein or whoever, they used their perception and inference, very sophisticated inference, to come to know things. And then you don't need Einstein to come, you don't need Newton to come. And the local teacher who has understood it can actually convey it to you. But we are not talking about what you are doing now. What we are talking about, the first person, how did they get it? You understand? It is through perception and inference. So this is Aparavidya. Anything that you have studied so far in the college or wherever you studied, the knowledge is gained through perception and inference. What is the second characteristic of Aparavidya? What else characterizes Aparavidya? If you have studied, any thoughts?
If you know one thing, you don't know the other thing.
Excellent. Right. So the characteristic of Aparavidya is, if you know chemistry, you only know chemistry. It doesn't automatically make you know biology. Right? Even within science, if you are focusing on physics, it doesn't mean that you will know, even within physics, if you focus on quantum physics, you may not know astronomy. So what it means is, it's a knowledge of a given thing. And when you study that given thing, you don't know everything else. That is the characteristic of Aparavidya. Which doesn't include everything else, or even the second thing. What is the third characteristic? What is the nature of Aparavidya? It's not always changing, but it is it is subject to negation.
It's evolving.
And it is evolving. What it means is, the classical physics for longest time believed that time and space is absolute. That was a paradigm within which it was working. And then came Einstein and he said time and space, by the way, is not absolute, it is relative. So that was a shift of paradigm, right? So what it means is, it's not always changing, but what it means is that it is subject to negation. It is subject to negation. It's not like from one day to the other it changes. What it means is, somebody may discover something more which either negates or builds on something which was not discovered earlier. So what it means is, today's day and age, we see artificial intelligence, and that itself has built on what? the fact that we are able to come up with artificial intelligence is not like one day unconnected to everything, we just come up with artificial intelligence. All the previous discoveries, we are building on the knowledge, and what we are able to do is, as we build knowledge, we either negate what was said earlier or we build on it and discover something new. That's how it is evolving, right? That's the meaning of it is evolving. And it is either subject to negation or it is further building on it. This is why the research labs will never close. They will never close because by the time you discover something else, it may lead to another question, and now you get then engaged in asking another question. So the scientists, that they get a kick out of it, understanding the mysteries of the universe. So there is a lovely story that Albert Einstein, at the time of the Second World War, he was called by President of United States, and they were going to form the state of Israel. And he was called and he was told that why don't you become the head of the state of a newly formed Israel? And Einstein comes home and he says, I saw a play in Bombay. So Einstein comes home and he says, yeah, today the President of America offered me to be the head of the state of a newly formed state Israel. But that's too boring. My life is really engaged in understanding the mysteries of the universe. Why would I do something mundane like that? What does it mean? They are looking at things and they are understanding things, and that itself gives them such a deep engagement. You can't just say, oh, Apara Vidya is all avidya. No, Apara Vidya is brilliant also in its own way. This is why Preyas is relative good and Shreyas is absolute good. Paravidya is good. It's not good. But it has it's fraught with some limitations. Right? So what are the limitations? It is based on perception and inference. And our perception itself is so limited. Right? This is why with all the discoveries, scientists themselves say that we have discovered about 10% of the universe. Because so many data is not available to your perception. So no matter how sophisticated your inference is, but you are limited by perception. You can't get to see everything. So this is why this data itself is limited, even though your reasoning can be sophisticated. That you know one thing doesn't automatically make you know everything else. And that very thing that you know, you can always find out more about it, or you can negate what you know. So this is the characteristic of Aparavidya. Now, as opposed to this, what is Paravidya? What are the characteristics of Paravidya? What do you think?
Unmediated. It's not based on perception but on self-revealing.
It's not self-revealing. If it was self-revealing, you will know it.
But it's based on the fact that you know that you are, right? Or
yeah, but if you know you are, you don't need Pramana. I mean, you don't need
you don't
Vedanta.
know what you are, but you know you are.
Yeah. So here, this Pramana, that is something slightly different. You're right. That will come little bit later. We will come to it little bit later. But here, this Pramana is not something that is based on your perception and inference. So what it means is, these words don't come from one human being trying to speculate on what is the nature of the universe. Then where do they come from? If they don't come from perception and inference, where do they come from?
It's revealed to you, through Shabda Brahma, through Vedas.
So, the source is only one, Ishvara, all knowledge and all power, which doesn't have ignorance. Your mind has limited knowledge, but the source, the Vedas, the words, they are words, but where do they come from? Where do these words come from? All knowledge and all power. So you don't know what is the nature of the universe, but Ishvara is not confused about what is the nature of the universe. So the source is not perception and inference. The source is Ishvara. That's why it is not limited. So, in fact, both this knowledge are not unknown to Ishvara. Way before, Einstein discovered that time and space is it is relative. In Ishvara's knowledge, was it wheel? No. Time and space was already relative, but human beings had a veil, and what one person did is to remove that veil. So that person, with reference to that knowledge, is Rishi. He is the first one to see this reality. But that reality already existed in all knowledge and all power. So, whether it is Paravidya or it is Aparavidya, the knowledge rests with all knowledge and all power, Ishvara. What we do is, we shed our ignorance, but the method through which we shed our ignorance is different. Here, we shed our ignorance through our perception and our inference. Here, we are incapable of shedding that ignorance through our perception and inference. We need the words of the Vedas, which are revealed by all knowledge and power. It is not confused about what is the nature of the universe. Through the words of Veda, knowledge and power reveals who you are. Knowledge and power also reveals, Ishvara also reveals who Ishvara is and how there is identity between you and Ishvara. So the source of knowledge, Pramana itself, the author of Pramana is, the author of knowledge is Ishvara. That's why we call it Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means it is not gained with your normal methods of knowing. Now, this is Shabda Pramana and the author is Ishvara. Ishvara revealing what is the nature of the universe and what is your nature. Okay? So, is gained through the words of Vedas, which themselves are revealed by Ishvara. Now, what else is Paravidya? What else are the characteristics of Paravidya?
Be negated.
It negates.
Can't be negated.
It can't be negated. Okay. So it's talking about the absolute, which is not subject to negation. So what happens is, when you learn something relative, then knowledge of the relative can always be improved upon, right? But here, Ishvara is revealing the total, which is not subject to negation. It is not like, okay, tomorrow's discoveries will negate what Vedanta says. Why?
It already exists, so it's already there, you just have to see it.
Absolutely, right. So what it means is, tomorrow's discoveries are going to be in which domain? Perception and inference. Any discovery that you are going to make with the human mind is going to be within this domain. But this is not revealing, this knowledge is not revealing a given thing. This knowledge is revealing the totality. So knowledge of a given thing or improving on knowledge of a given thing doesn't change the totality. So this is why it is not subject to negation. What is the third characteristic of Paravidya?
Like Chandogya Upanishad said, is there anything knowing which I know everything?
Excellent, right? It is the knowledge of the total. So that means it's not part, it's not knowing a given part, it's knowing the whole. And that whole is changeless whole. It doesn't change. So it doesn't undergo change. So you can't say, oh, it was like this earlier and it will be different later. So what it will be later, I don't know. It's not a speculation. So what does it mean? It is what? By knowing which, it's knowing of the whole, not a part. A changeless whole. So once you know it totally, and nobody can say, oh, now you know it, and then what if it is negated in the future? It is not possible. It is not possible because it's about the changeless whole. So if it is changeless whole, if you get it, you get it. It's not going to change. And if you don't get it, you don't get it. Right? So this is something which is, and once it is gained, it is not subject to negation. So this is the difference between Paravidya and Aparavidya. It is different. This is why whatever we have learned so far falls within Paravidya. And generally what happens is, when you study Pramana, you try to fit it into this. Because this is what we are familiar with. So even the questions, that, oh, today I know Brahman in this way, but tomorrow there can be other discoveries which can negate this. Where is this question coming from? The way Aparavidya is gathered. Because this is what happens here. Empirically, this is what we see. And what we do is we try to apply the same logic to Paravidya. That's why it's very important to understand the differences between Paravidya and Aparavidya, how it works.
As I studied Kena Upanishad, I understood that everything which was in my mind before was Aparavidya.
Excellent.
It was so, I couldn't, the moment I saw it, everything what was in my mind was Aparavidya. Incredible.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
Everything that you have learned so far falls within
this.
Aparavidya.
And we must open it up to see Paravidya.
To this
Otherwise,
Paravidya.
this is what you say, when we go with a view of Aparavidya to Paravidya. We
So,
don't understand.
if the scientists, there are people who will say this, and what is this? I will not listen to Vedanta until scientific methods are used. What does it mean?
You can only use them.
You can only use in Aparavidya. Here it's not possible.
But the moment I understood, I was proud of what I learned and my thinking process, and then I thought, oh, Aparavidya.
Excellent. Right? So the methods are different, the source is different, the subject matter is different. And that we need to keep in mind. Otherwise, what happens is, sometimes what Gabby was saying the other day, that suppose in Aparavidya you are really smart. What does it do? Because you have been smart and because you've been figuring things out that the teachers taught you, what happens is sometimes it is great because you have logical abilities and you can, but sometimes you want to stay within this paradigm, it becomes an impediment. Because this is different. And you have to see that it is different. All the rules here don't apply here.
And you are fighting for Aparavidya and doing everything, and then you see, the whole mind is only Aparavidya.
Exactly, the whole mind. And this is where the difficulty comes from. Because even if you're using pramana, the method that you use is constrained by this because this is what you're familiar with. You're not familiar with, you have never come across something like this. Mind has to understand it slightly differently.
And this is incredible what Shruti does when they show you, this was and this is another kind of understanding. It's much, 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 much bigger. Yeah.
Right? So now, having understood what are the differences between Paravidya and Aparavidya, can we conclude? Yeah.
Is it true that the list that we can make the list way longer than we did now?
Yeah, what are the other things?
So, for instance, Paravidya is not subject to objectification.
Yeah, that is this, no? It comes under this. Perception is objectified, right? Perception is objectification.
Yes.
So here this is gained through perception. Here it is not gained through perception. The meaning is it cannot be objectified. Because if it is objectifiable, it is available for perception.
Okay. Same for that falls in the time and space frame. That's outside of.
So, if you say that, it's problematic. Why is it problematic? Are you studying Paravidya within time and space or not?
Yes.
So then if you say it is totally outside time and space, what are you saying? You can never study it.
Yeah.
Now we are talking about Paravidya. So what does it mean? Somebody in time is sitting and listening. And somebody in time is talking about it. What is being revealed is true. What is being revealed is not an object within time and space. What is revealed is that which is the cause of time, space and object universe. The subject matter is different. Right? Here, the subject matter of things of the world that you study, they are within time and space framework. Anything that you study, whether you study the planets or you study astrology or astronomy or whatever, all the objects are within time and space. Here you are looking into what is the cause of this universe. The cause has to precede the universe. Universe includes time, space and object. So the subject matter is different. That's why you can't use your perception and inference. What is available to you is time, space, object, universe. You cannot answer with the perception the question, what is the cause of this? Because you have no data. You understand? Yes, so the subject matter is different. Here you are studying one of the things in the universe. What are you studying here? The changeless, the whole, which is the cause of the whole time, space, object, universe. So the subject matter is different. So all these things that you are saying kind of are included in this analysis.
Sorry, I have a clarification because I have some doubts from what I have read. That here is limited by the ability of words to take you only up to a certain understanding, right? Because can we say this, that words can only take you to those 4 categories? Is that relevant here or not? Because you're restricted to where words can take you in terms of Gana and in terms of Sambandha, in terms of Kriya. But here, you need words to take you to this understanding.
Okay.
But I just need some clarification.
Yeah, so that is a slightly different idea, but I can explain this. This perception and inference right? They can give you knowledge of things of the world. And therefore, whatever knowledge we have created language for that. You can't create a language for unknown things. So that means our language generally is restricted to what we know. And what we know so far is what everything that we have gained through perception and inference. So our knowledge and the words, the language, and the words which are used in the language are with reference to things of the world. Now, in Paravidya, you don't want to show one of the things of the world. You want to show the nature of the cause. But we don't have words for it. Because the words that we have are only for things that we know. That's how we have created language. So now, how are you going to use these limited words of which indicate things within time, space and object to indicate something which is not within time, space and object? So, this is what they say, that the words or the language indicate things of the world. What does it mean? They indicate 4 things: Jati, Guna, Kriya and Sambandha. Because this is what is available within our perception and inference. What is Jati? You can indicate, okay? All the animals is one Jati. And within this Jati, you have many different kinds of animals. Guna. What is Guna? This is a white cow. This is a black cow. These are the words that we have in our language, because whatever words we have is with reference to things that we know. You can't create words for things that you don't know. So, that is Guna. Kriya, action. So you see all kinds of action: running, walking fast, brisk walking. So you have a lot of other things, right? Then you have new vocabulary, Yin Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. So you have all these actions, right? Kriya. And then Sambandha. And what is Sambandha? Sambandha is relationships. This is Nachiketa's father, Rama's son. So what does it mean? So the words that we have in our language are with reference to things that we know through our perception and inference, and they indicate what? Either Jati, Guna, Kriya or Sambandha. Now, this cause that we are trying to know, which category does it fall into? None. Because it's not a given object of the world, and it doesn't have any specific attribute. Oh, the cause is only good, then what happens to bad? It's not a given object in the universe, so it doesn't have any relationship to anything, because it's one cause. The relationship requires 2. Do you understand? So it doesn't fall within the language that we use and the words we use and the meanings they have. Now the question is, how are the words of Pramana, using these words, going to convey something very different? That is the question. How? Because these words cannot reach this. These words are for the things of the world that we can come to know through perception and inference. This is a question which is raised in our Shastra. Swati.
Start with, as far as I understood, you start with something, describe it, and then you use other words that specifies it more, and so that's...
Okay, good. So what we say is, if you use totally unknown words for indicating something, who will understand? You have to use known words, but the known words have a constraint. So there is a method. And what is the method? Any word has two meanings. One is Vachyartha. The other is Lakshyartha. What is Vachyartha? The direct meaning of the word. What is Lakshyartha? The implied meaning of the word. This is why there is so much difficulty in understanding the words of Vedanta. Because suppose I say Atma is existence, Sat, existence. What is the direct meaning of the word existence for you? Any existence that you are familiar with is existence within time and within space. But if it doesn't use the word existence, it cannot convey anything. So it has to use the Vachyartha, existence. But it knows that it will have limited connotation for you. It knows. Because that's how you are used to. So that's why, as Martina says, it will specify. This is called Lakshyartha. It is an existence, but it is not an existence in time. What does it do? It uses the word and then uses the methodology to remove the restriction that this word creates in your mind. This is why the word consciousness, the way we are used to it and way Vedanta uses it, is very different. And this is why we keep getting stuck with what we are familiar with. But what Vedanta does is, it cannot not use that word. It uses that word, but removes the normal connotation and it moves you from Vachyartha to Lakshyartha. And you have to follow it. You can't halfway lose your concentration and start imagining things. If you start imagining things, you go on somewhere else. This is why the precision when you listen to pramana is of paramount importance, because with limited words, it's trying to convey something which is not the direct meaning of any word. But it has a methodology to use the words and remove the restrictions, and you have to follow it. And exactly as pramana shows you. Not things which are floating in your head, right? So, this is the method. Because using limited word, you are trying to show something which is free from limitation. But you can't use other words, because if I use, like Swamiji was funny, he said, suppose I say, Atma is Gangabuka, because that's a new word for something unusual. What will you understand? Nothing. I'm constrained to use words which are familiar with you. But the problem with the words which are familiar with you are with reference to empirical realities. And I have to use those empirical words to convey something which doesn't fall within empirical reality. So there is a method. Taking you from Vachyartha to Lakshyartha.
And is it correct that Lakshyartha can be further categorized in different types of Lakshyartha?
Yeah.
Because consciousness is, I believe, like Swarupa, Lakshyartha, and then for
Yeah.
existence you use in other.
Now Surya is saying that we are a little bit digressing from the topic, but yes, Lakshata can be used in different ways. But this is me, the compelling teacher. I will do it quickly, right? But then we no more further question, because then it just goes on and on and on, and then we have whole text to finish. Okay, but I will talk about that Lakshata, which is this Vachyata is the direct meaning, and Lakshata is the implied meaning, which is not the direct meaning. There are three kinds of Lakshata, Lakshanas. One is called Jahal Lakshana. Second is Ajahal Lakshana. And the third is Bhagatyaga Lakshana. Three different types of implied meanings. I'll give example of each one of them quickly so that you have an idea. What is Jahal Lakshana? Jahal Lakshana is, look at this. If we go to a race course and we are watching a race, and if I say white is going to win, white is a color. How can it win? What is the direct meaning of the word white?
Whitewash.
The color.
The direct meaning.
The
Vachyartha. What is the Vachyartha?
color.
Color. The color cannot run. So that means now you know that the direct meaning doesn't make sense. You need to think about the implied meaning. So even if I say white will win, in order for you to understand the sentence, what will you do? You will add one word. And what is that? Horse. So what it means is, white is a guna. It cannot run. It's an attribute. It cannot run. So you have to give up the guna and bring the noun, because only noun can run. This is called Jahal Lakshana. The word white is used, but then you can say, why can't you say the white horse? Yeah, you can say white horse runs, but here you are just saying white runs, and you can figure out what it means by giving up white but bringing in horse. But why then white was used? Because we are not talking about any horse, we are talking about white horse. So it served its purpose to convey what it wanted to convey. So this is called Jahal Lakshana. What is a Jahal Lakshana? You say that the person lives on the river. Can anybody live on the river? No. So what do you need to do? To understand this literal meaning is not possible. Nobody can live on the river. What do you need to do?
Bring out house
On the banks. So you need to bring. You keep the river, because river is a noun. But what you are doing is, here you are giving a guna and you are bringing the noun. Here, what are you doing? What are you doing here? You are keeping the river, which is a noun, but you are bringing some additional information. And what is it? Living on the river is not possible. It is living on the bank of the river. You are bringing the bank. So you retain the river, but you bring one additional information for the sentence to make sense. Do you understand? Moving from Vachyata, the literal meaning, which doesn't make sense, to Lakshata, the intended meaning. You have to play with the sentence. What is Bhagatyaga Lakshana? Bhagatyaga Lakshana is, there is a story in the tradition that suppose you had a friend when you were very young, right? So the tradition is Devadatta had a friend. Now Devadatta is separated from this friend. Now Devadatta has his own life and this friend has his own life. One day when Devadatta is 35 years old, he goes to a party and somebody who knows Devadatta and also knows his friend comes to Devadatta and says, "Look, who is here?" And Devadatta says, "I don't know who is this." This is that Rama. So what does it mean? How does Devadatta recognize Rama as his childhood friend? How?
This Rama is that.
This Rama is that Rama. So what does it mean? Look at this. Rama of this time and space and Rama that he knew in childhood of that time and that space looks very different. Rama was 2 feet when he was playing. Now Rama is 6 feet. Rama was 3 years old. Now Rama is 35 years old. But he still understands this is that Rama. In order to understand that, he has to give up the time and space and the context. And what does he have to do? That this person looked very different, at very different height, had very different characteristics then. It is very different characteristics now, but this is that Rama. Bhagatyaga Lakshana. You give up 2 feet, you give up 6 feet. You give up 3 years old, you give up 60 years old. And you retain the person, Rama. Bhagatyaga Lakshana. You have given up some characteristics, but you have retained one thing which allows you to understand this is that Rama. Now, these are the 3 basic ways in which implied meanings are used. Now, suppose I ask you, in Vedanta, which of is it Jahal Lakshana? How is Atma indicated? Ajahal Lakshana or Bhagatyaga Lakshana? What do you think?
I think Bhagatyaga.
Correct. Why?
Because this may lead. You give up this limited identity. It's like the water that is the equal of the ocean and the wave.
So you give up your waveness
Yeah.
and you give up the oceanness to come to the water. If you retain that, there is no equation. You understand? So what it means is, you give up the part and you retain one thing. And that's how you come to know, I am the whole. If you continue to identify with your body and mind as your final reality, it's impossible. You have to give up.
Now, can I say this? What I think is that? Can I think it like that?
Yeah. So generally, as I said, existence, when Shastra uses Atma is Sat, Chit, Anantam, the meaning of Sat is existence. But the normal meaning, Vachyartha, is what? Existence within time and space. So, what we have to do is keep the word existence and take away the connotation it is limited to time and space. There is a method. I will show you that. When you use the word consciousness, it's somehow connected to the mind. But it's not talking about mind. Mind is not limitless. So you retain the word consciousness and you remove what? The limited connotation, which is that consciousness which is somehow connected to the conscious mind. That's not what Shastra is trying to say. That is not limitless. So you give up that and you retain one part, and that essential being is who you are. Bhagatyaga Lakshana. So this is how the words are used through indication, right? The direct meaning of the words cannot convey the final truth, because the words that we have in our language are with reference to things that we know, and what we do need to know is something which is more fundamental, and there are no words because we don't know it. So this is the method. But you can't use unknown words. That's how you have to use the known words, which are restricted, but take out that restriction. This is what we call pramana pravritti. The teacher has to use this pramana and take out, make you understand what to keep and what to take out. Otherwise, you will only take what you are familiar with and you will fly.
And that is why teacher is so important.
That's why the teacher is of paramount importance.
It goes quicker with the teacher.
Much quicker.
Yeah.
They say once you find a good teacher, you got it.
Yeah.
Because imagine all the confusion. If the teacher himself or herself is unclear, you are in one big chakkar. You have all these words, you have all these technical words floating in your head. Nothing sits in its right place. It's dangerous. And then you want to impress others. So you use all these technical words. And everybody thinks, wow, you know so much. But nothing has sat in your own head. What are you going to communicate to somebody else? That's why we have to pray. Give me the right teacher. Because unfortunately, we ourselves, the way we are unable to discriminate. Everybody seems correct. No. Even students from the same tradition are very different. One has to discriminate. Because here we are not knowing something. It's not like I'm going here and getting little here and getting little there and putting it all together. It's not knowledge like that. It's not gathering information and putting it together. It is going from your paradigm and somebody leading you to another paradigm, which requires a lot of effort and a lot of precision and a lot of care that you don't go on a tangent. So, okay, now what is the time? Oh, it's almost 10:30. Now you ask me questions like this, then I have to elaborate. I as a teacher, I cannot leave it halfway. But it's good. I mean, otherwise it just becomes, even for me, too mechanical. So it's good. I love these questions. The only problem is it's a time constraint.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yesterday I was a little sad because I had the feeling I don't understand Ishvara.
But I haven't talked about Ishvara.
No, just
Okay.
and now I see that I always dwell in the area of Aparavidya,
Yeah.
and there Ishvara is, of course, but I can find it by other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. 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 That is so important, Martina, to recognize. Our mind can only work within what we are familiar with. And whatever the words of Shastra are, you keep trying to putting into things that you are familiar with. This is why it takes years for people to understand Vedanta.
It's really suffering because I want to know and
Yes.
I hear you saying and I really want. Now I have one more thing to understand why.
Yeah. Right? We are not understanding something unlike anything that we have understood so far. Right? This is why you need to, very, very beautiful, Martina. Very nice. Right? And see, the thing is, you are right. You have listened to Ishvara in many of my classes earlier. But this time, I have not yet totally explained what is Ishvara. So what does it mean? Everything that you have studied, even if it was not accurate, this time, what can happen? Tell me. You have little more accuracy. Everything that you knew so far, is it useless? Is it useless? No. It will now allow you, you have come up to this point, it will now allow you to become more precise. This is how the process of knowing is. If you hurry it up, if you from the first class you want to understand Ishvara 100%, it's not possible. Nobody can understand. Not only you, nobody. But all these inaccuracies, right, we begin to shed little, Every time it allows us to know little more. This is the process. Until one day our mind totally abides in this truth. This is why this process takes time. But all that you have understood so far, even though it may not be accurate, it will pave the way for you to make that next step. That's why you don't look at it with regret. You don't, this is how things are. This is Ishvara's order. Even knowledge doesn't come overnight. It is all built. Somebody's discovery, others build on it. Then others build on that. Then others build on that. That's how you get to the present day. Similarly, your mind builds on, what it knows until it gets final clarity. So thank you for being so honest, but this is very common, right? So in fact, if I tell you the truth, for first 5 years, I'm only trying to just figure out what exactly Vedanta is saying. For first 5 years of my life. Because it's difficult. It may seem easy, yeah. If you're simpleton, it may seem easy. But it's not easy. So, this is how. But thank God, for 5 years, I didn't even know whether Vedanta was the truth or not. I was just exploring. But thank God, I did not immediately conclude it is the truth. Because if I had immediately concluded, I would have missed a lot of logical steps. Thank God, that actually came to my advantage. Because I didn't just swallow things. I really wanted to make sure that this is how it is. It's not like somebody saying it, therefore it is. No, my mind could not accept it. But that's exactly what actually helped me to understand it. So, if after 5 years or 10 years, if you feel some days I don't understand it, thank God you recognize it. Thank God you understand that it's not like, you are expected to understand everything after the third class. No. In fact, that is unrealistic. This is this individual who wants to hurry up. Pressure. It takes its time. Right? It takes its time. A lot of revisions. That's how it is. Precision, depth. It's all like that. So. Okay. Now let's move to. Now just one last point about this, and then I will do the next class. Now that I talked about something big, I don't want to immediately go. I will go in the next class. Before I close this topic, I want to do one final point. Given the fact that there are such different things and such different processes, now we need to think about, is there any convergence? Is there any convergence between Aparavidya and Aparavidya? Then we have understood it totally and fully. We'll close the loop. Is there any convergence? What do you think?
What does it mean in a convergence?
Convergence means, do they come together in any way? Two are totally separate and mutually exclusive, or there is some connection between the two? Okay, good. What is that connection?
Is it that both use the mind?
Both use the mind. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, good. 1 minute. Good point. Whether you want to know Paravidya or you want to know Aparavidya, both. Where does knowledge take place? In your mind. There is no other place where knowledge takes place. So both you have to use your mind. Good. In both. What about? You had something to say?
I would say Paravidya includes Aparavidya, but not the other way around.
But how does it include? So, for example, knowledge, if you have to know the nature of Ishvara, it doesn't mean you will know physics in detail, chemistry in detail, you will know astronomy in detail. So, you can't say Aparavidya includes Aparavidya. You see what I mean? Otherwise, you will then know everything.
But I think the connection, because I think we discussed Shreyas, and then
You want to use the same logic.
we talked about yoga. For instance, we talked about yoga, but it's not. You have the final knowledge that you know how to do the downward facing dog, for instance.
Yeah, but be a little bit more precise. Because if you say Paravidya includes Aparavidya, anybody who is logically asking you this question, if Paravidya includes Aparavidya, by knowing Paravidya, I'll know all Aparavidya. I will know all science, I will know all chemistry, I will know astrology, astronomy. So you need little bit more precision in what you are saying and little deeper thinking to see the connection. You see, even if you are trying, right, you have to find the exact connection, otherwise logically it doesn't fall in place. So good try, but be little bit more precise.
So I would then say, like a verse where it is said, by knowing this, you know everything. So then it comes down to, the essence.
Excellent. It's not that you know all the details, but what is Aparavidya doing? Giving you the details. Right? So by knowing this, you don't know all the details. If you knew all the details, and you will become Ishvara. So you don't.
No, but it's like the pot. If you know the clay, you know the essence of all the pots.
Yeah, that's why it is knowing the whole and not the detail. It doesn't include. If you know clay, you don't know all the details of the pots which existed 1,000 years ago, and you don't know art history expert, he's talking about this pot which belonged to this century, created in this art form. All that you don't know. You still don't know the details.
I'm thinking about Paravidya as a modification of Paravidya. Can I say it like that?
Okay. Little more precise, right? What you are trying to say, I understand, but it's not precise enough, right? What it means is, even Aparavidya, actually the whole universe, according to Vedanta, is nothing but knowledge and power, manifestation of knowledge and power. So through Aparavidya, you are studying a given aspect of any given discipline is a given aspect of Ishvara. When you are studying biology, what are you studying? Ishvara's intelligence from the standpoint of how the living organisms are arranged. When you are studying astronomy, you are studying what? Ishvara's knowledge as it manifests in configuration of stars and planets. So, in Aparavidya, you are studying a given aspect of Ishvara. In Paravidya, you are studying the essence or the nature of Ishvara. That is much more precise. Right? And this is why the glimpse of that knowledge and power is, you can never end, because you can never, any astronomy or astrology or biology, is knowledge within knowledge within knowledge. This is Ishvara. You cannot fathom even one given thing completely and totally. The details are infinite. That's why you can never understand all the details of Ishvara. But in Paravidya, you have to understand not all the details, but the essence.
I only wanted to repeat what you said. In Aparavidya, we study an aspect of Ishvara, whereas in Paravidya, we study to find the truth of Ishvara.
Super. That is precise. Right? That's why you can't say, you cannot negate, Aparavidya is useless. You can't say that. See, we all create division. Since Paravidya only gives me Shreyas, Aparavidya is useless. This is a very primitive statement. Aparavidya is also, it helps you because you are looking into the details of Ishvara, and it gives you some pleasure and it gives you awe, and you begin to see the intricacies and you are like, wow. It's a glimpse into an aspect of Ishvara.
When I say in Aparavidya we study an aspect of Ishvara, it's because we see the universe, we go with our perception and inference, and we study an aspect.
A given thing.
Whereas the Shastras or Paravidya shows us what we can't study in Aparavidya. Can I say it like that?
Super.
We go
what you can't study, because you don't see whole of Ishvara. You can only see Ishvara.
Nima, isn't it also that we try to, with our mind, to, I said this is it, and that at the same time it's everything, isn't it? Do you understand what I mean?
But the thing is, there are differences, right? You need to understand that where are the differences and what is the convergence. You need to understand both. Otherwise, what happens is, you just negate and you say, Aparavidya is useless because it doesn't get me Shreyas, and Paravidya alone is important. It's not like that.
It's an interesting view. I haven't seen this view before. Like, this is, I'm a little bit shaken now. To see here, I study in Aparavidya, I study parts of Ishvara.
Yeah.
I study you, for example. I study Schönheit, wollte ich sagen, the beauty of Ishvara when I look at you. It's a part of Paravidya.
Yeah.
And when I go to Paravidya, I study the truth of this beauty of Nima. Can I say that?
I mean, yes, exactly.
Yes.
So, this is something which is very, very important. And this is why, since they are not totally mutually exclusive, what is important is, what is very important is, even though Aparavidya is fraught with all these limitations, science carries a certain weight. Why does it carry a certain weight? It is fraught with these limitations. But when you say it is scientific, people give it a little bit more weight. Why? Because the processes which are used are like inference can't be loose inference. You can't just make jumps in your logic and just prove something. If you have to prove to a scientific community that your theory is right, there is a lot of rigor. They will question you from all angles and you have to be able to answer. So that means there is a lot of intellectual rigor. That's why, and suppose you have that intellectual rigor, what has it done? Your mind has become more precise and less vague. You don't make loose statements, you don't make loose connections. Now, as Nidhi said, mind has to be used by both Paravidya and Aparavidya. This discipline of precision through your studies is going to help you in processing Paravidya. Because you don't start imagining things. You don't start building and some fantasies. The precision that you acquire through going to school and through learning Paravidya, use of logic, use of reasoning, use of rational, that is going to make your mind more available for capturing Paravidya.
Because you understand more and more Ishvara's knowledge.
Yeah, because here you have invested in knowing the details which has made your mind precise, subtle, and that will help for you to understand whole of Ishvara. So what it means is, one thing Swamiji used to say, and this is something which is very, very important, that Vedanta is a cognitive process and Vedanta is a cognitive process. You need logical, clear mind. You cannot be led to the truth from Vachyartha to Lakshyartha unless you don't have if you don't have precision in between, your mind will go all over the place and create its own stories. That precision can be acquired, he used to say, through different things. If you have gone to college and you have studied engineering, that faculty is developed for you. So that will help. He says if you have not gone to college and if you have not studied that, then he said, study Sanskrit. Because when you study grammar, when you study Panini grammar, it's all nothing but mathematics and precision. You make small mistake and you don't understand sutra at all. So what does it mean? That discipline of seeing the connections, logical progression, not skipping steps is required. How you acquire it? Well, there are different methods of acquiring it, but you can't skip it. So this is where also, right, a part of a job of a teacher is to, when the student's mind is flying with ideas, you have to bring it back. You have to bring it back to the truth, because otherwise you just take off. Precision is something which is critical to understanding Vedanta. The mind and its processes have to become much more focused so that pramana can work. Now, what is interesting is the mind, the way Ishvara has made it, the mind has to be used for aparavidya, but it's not just, look at this, logical processes have to be intact, but emotional life has to be flowing. So what does it mean? It's not unidimensional development of mind. In aparavidya, you can be a brilliant engineer, but emotionally a wreck. In paravidya, it's not going to be possible. What does it mean? If you keep giving yourself, Surya, it's okay, the messages, Surya, it's okay. If you keep giving yourself messages that I'm small, I'm insignificant, I'm nobody, even if your cognitive processes or you are living from a trauma, my mom did this to me, or my dad did this to me, or life has been unfair. Even if your cognitive processes are intact, the fact that you are limitless doesn't sit with you. Do you understand?
I can see, yeah. It's very good that you said also.
So it's not just look at this. This is why Ishvara has made it not that easy. You need this, but you also need this. It's not one or the other.
It's not unimportant.
And both are equally important. Right? So you need the mind which has logical capacities, which is emotionally mature. There is one more thing to the mind, which is what Surya used to say, that you know what, if you're just analytical, then generally analytical mind has a tendency, like in aparavidya, to go in depth and going on seeing it. And what generally happens is, if you keep going to the depth, you miss the big picture. So this is what we call creative mind. Creative mind is also not just analytical mind, which goes in detail, but it also is able to see something big out of the box. So you need a creative mind, which is able to think out of the box. And you also need the fourth thing, which is what we call saintliness. What is saintliness? You can be emotionally mature. You can think, you can be aware of your anger and pain or sadness, and you've dealt with it and you kind of let them flow without denial or suppression. But saintliness is another ballgame altogether. What does it mean? Reaching out to others. You can be emotionally mature and be in touch with your emotional life, but saintliness is one step forward. Compassion, showing care, not being indifferent to others, becoming a contributor. This is more than what is expected of you. Going one step more. That mind is required. Why? Because if you keep retaining your identity with this individual, limitless is too far. You need to relatively expand as a human being and embrace everybody. That's why you can't afford to look at the world as pain, source of pain. That will only make you protective against. You need to expand and embrace. This why compassion.
This feeds this.
You need a relative expansion. You need to identify with the whole humanity. You cannot see yourself as I am this spiritual person and everybody else is lost. This is a primitive thinking.
And with that you feed yourself.
Yeah. So that means, look, Ishvara has made preparation of mind, not unidimensional, multidimensional. And developing this, plus engaging with Shastra and understanding it totally accurately and putting everything in its place takes time. So please don't make Vedanta, give it enough gravitas. Don't frivolously say, I understand. It's not small. It's not something small to understand. And sometimes I hear, I've heard for 3 years. Yeah, 3 years is nothing. For how many years we have been making this mistake? Time immemorial. What is 10 years? What is 15 years? In fact, even if it is 10, you should be so grateful that look, in 15 years, how much of load which I have been carrying for time immemorial I have been able to shed, and for which I thank Ishvara. What quantum jumps I have been able to make. From where to where I have reached. Instead of being in this false hurry and convincing yourself, I get it. This is the worst thing you can do to yourself. Prematurely, with everything half-baked, tell yourself, I'm a Gnani and I only need to work on Brahmanishta. That's cognitive error. That's delusion. What is not understood, if you tell yourself, I have understood, it's all frivolous. So, give this knowledge its own gravitas. Understand its enormity. Understand that the time that it takes. No person who is studying physics has hurry to say, I am a PhD tomorrow. Nobody. They engage, and they engage, and they engage, and they engage. And they really spend a lot of time and a lot of effort before the professor says, okay, now you have PhD. So even a given thing you have to understand, it takes years. The whole you have to understand. Everything has to be reshuffled. Everything has to shift. It takes time. And use the grace of Ishvara. Do it sincerely. Do it with full, alertness. Just do what needs to be done and begin to see the magic unfold. Way before you even understand, so many things come in place. Life becomes so much easier. Grace of Ishvara, the quality of your mind changes. Your relationship with others. Enjoy this process. Enjoy the magic working for you. Otherwise, it's you I'm frustrated. I don't want frustration. The only way I can free myself from frustration is if I know it. So let me know it. Immature person. Right? So this is something that I needed to spend time with. Paravidya, aparavidya. Understand the differences, but don't be categorical and say, now Paravidya is the only thing which is important and Aparavidya is useless. No, it's not true. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.